Hi, Paul Johnson here for Film Obsessive. Today I'm with Austin Nunes. Austin is director of a short documentary film. It's titled Into the Blue, Bloo, that is. It stars David Brumfield as Lagoona Bloo. It recently premiered at the 2024 Atlanta Out on Film LGBTQ Festival. Both Austin and David, aka Lagoona, are here with us today. Can I welcome you and have you both take a second to introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Austin Nunes. I'm the director of Into the Blue.
And I'm David Brumfield, otherwise known as the mermaid pop star Lagoona Blue. I'm a singer, songwriter, recording artist, and one of the best drag queens in the world. But that's only if you ask me, I guess.
Well, we did just ask you. It's great to meet you both. I really enjoyed the opportunity to see your film. Austin, can I have you start us off just by describing the film a little bit in your own words?
Yeah, sure. So Into the Blue is a 15-minute short documentary that, shows David getting ready for a really big show. At the time it was I think probably the biggest, act that you were doing at the time. So it's like on the precipice of this big moment for her as an artist. But at the same time, she's kind of recollecting, her childhood and coming to terms with, her relationship with her family, who had such an influence on her, both good and bad. I think that's, the duality of life. And it's about her kind of reckoning with both the trauma that they inflicted onto her and how that influenced her as an artist, but also the gifts that they gave her. So, like her dad was very musical and music was always a big thing in the family. And her mom, was a beacon of femininity, which of course contributes to drag. So it's kind of like an extended monologue, like a single point of view. It's all from Laguna's perspective. And it takes into account a lot of childhood footage that I think, acts as kind of the proof to what she's speaking about, because there's some really tough stories to listen to in there. And what's crazy is that some of it is on tape, from just her dad recording every single memory that they had in childhood. There was over 50 hours of footage that we sifted through. So yeah.
There's so much in there that I want to ask you, but I'm going to start us off by asking, when did you decide that you wanted to make a film about Laguna and her life centered in this moment? Like you'd known her for some time, right?
Yeah, in 2019, it was Pride kickoff, right?
Mhm,
Laguna.
mhm. Yeah.
It was New York was hosting World Pride. And
Yes.
she and a couple of other drag performers, Rose and Jan, her drag sisters, were performing the national anthem to kick off Pride. And their manager connected me with them and was like, we'd love to film this moment. It's a big moment. And that was the day I met Laguna. And, from there, we became friends and collaborated on different projects. I was a videographer. She's a drag queen. It was a match made in heaven.
Yeah.
And then I happened to go to a show of Laguna's where she announced that she was doing her biggest show yet, opening for another queer artist, Vincent, at remind me the name of the venue,
At Irving Plaza.
at Irving Plaza.
Yeah, which
Um,
is a venue here in New York City.
mhm. And it was at a time when, I mean, I'm a freelance filmmaker, so there's periods of really slow work and, periods where I'm just like completely overwhelmed. But this is a slow period. And I was very inspired that Laguna was about to do something big with her career. And I had always been a fan of music documentaries, and I so badly wanted to document this process because I know how much goes into it, making costumes, choreography, the arrangements, dance rehearsals. So I didn't know what it was going to be. I just know that I wanted to be there and capture it and see what it snowballed into,
Mhm.
which is Into the Blue.
And Laguna, what was your take on that at the moment? Did you ever imagine when you had those initial conversations with Austin that it would result in a film that came out like Into the Blue has?
I mean, I definitely didn't expect it to be what it is now. I will say that, but I just so excited. I mean, I was such a big fan of Austin. I remember the first time I'd ever heard of Austin was through a friend of mine, Lemon, and they together released something called a video portrait, and I just remember being so flabbergasted and so amazed at this like beautiful 1 minute representation of this artist. And I felt like at a time before video media was really hit the internet like and blew up before the pandemic, like I was just really blown away at this, and at Austin in general. And so when we started talking about it and working together, I don't know, it was just really exciting. I didn't expect it to be um, as in depth in my life as it became, because we just it was first, supposed to be all about the music and this experience and this this opportunity and this performance. But as we started working on it, and as we started building the world around my world, we it evolved into this really heart-wrenching and beautiful, short about, what it's like to take your trauma and make, really make lemons out of lemonade. So, or lemonade out of lemons. So, when life gives you lemons. So, it was, yeah, I know, I never imagined. But actually, but now I feel like, yes, I can't wait till we do a feature film. I can't wait till we do the whole thing.
I'm going
So,
to cycle back to that. But I do wonder just what it was like for you to go through all of the memories that were preserved on VHS from your childhood. Were those things that you'd seen recently? Had you been through them? Were they kind of new to you once again? And did you
well,
have any trepidation about bringing those into the film?
I don't think I had any trepidation going in because both of my parents are gone now. And I think I used to be really cautious about talking about my past and talking about my family because I guess I always had a fear that they would find out. I have had many of opportunities in my life where I've had to, they asked me about my past, and I've always really struggled talking about my family. And so then, when we started revisiting this and started retelling this story, actually there was this little bit of peace because it felt like I could finally tell it in the way that it was supposed to be told, and I could tell the truth, and I could really be honest about how brutal things were, for me growing up. But that being said, we were always in front of the camera.
Mhm.
My dad was obsessed with his VHR recorder, and he loved like capturing memories in that way. So we were very used to it. And at every holiday, my dad would just like play all of our home videos from like the year. So it was kind of like something that was very part of my life. My dad was also a performer and also a singer. So my dad would also like record himself singing. I'm sure, Austin, you probably saw many hours of my dad just like playing the guitar and singing to himself or singing to like me as a baby, like so. It's very interesting that form of media, that form of VHS recording is very common and very I don't know, like, yeah, it was always a huge part of my life. So when we started talking about it and when we started exploring it as part of Into the Blue, it just kind of made sense because one, there was so much of it, and B, it like, echoing what Austin said, it really shows, you
Well,
know,
I,
yeah.
I, I appreciated that it's there, and I appreciate your candor in bringing it in there. And I also appreciate from a filmmaker's perspective and having taught film and documentary filmmaking, I know what a challenge it is actually to be able to work that material into a narrative without slowing it down or losing track of it. So I'd like just to ask Austin a little bit about your work as a filmmaker here to create a kind of a narrative whole here.
To create a narrative what? Sorry.
A whole, a whole narrative, WHOLE.
Ah, yes.
Something that feels very complete, even while it's set in a specific moment, but going backwards in time and also kind of forwards, even.
Sure. I mean, even before I talk about that, just to give some context, when we were filming this and we had done the interview, that is, the meat and potatoes of the film, I know that Laguna's dad had recently passed. I think it was within the year.
Yeah.
And your his house was being cleared out and your sister found all the tapes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we were kind of in the middle of making all of this, and I don't know how it came to be, but essentially she shipped up the discs, the tapes, to New York, and I
Oh.
took them to get digitized for the film. And it really was an enormous act of trust on Laguna's part to allow me to handle that, and then also be the first one to like really see the footage and sift through it. I mean, I remember the moment I plugged in that hard drive, like it felt like a sacred moment. And Laguna really did trust me so much. And I'm so grateful for that. But really, I was skimming and scrubbing through all of the footage for all the proof I needed essentially of what she had already talked about. I mean, in their interview, she talks about how she was always called fat as a kid by her own parents. And then I'm going through the footage and I find a clip of her dad calling her fat on camera. It was just, I was looking for those moments that represented the stories that she was telling. And, of course, there's like so much footage of Laguna's mom because her dad was recording most of the time. So, that allowed me to create a really nice montage to honor her life, after the first act of the film. So, really, I was just looking for moments that spoke to the stories that Laguna was telling.
You've also made a choice. Maybe it's a choice made by the two of you, but I think that allowing the film largely to take place in the dressing room pre-performance, where the makeup, the transformation is underway, but it's not complete, speaks to both sides of the personality, if you will. And we have Laguna looking into mirror, but you also take the opportunity to go both backwards and forwards. And it feels very intimate and spontaneous, but I'd like you to ask about what you're doing as a filmmaker to achieve that.
To achieve
The
just that.
the the notion of intimacy and spontaneity in the film.
Well, I mean, we have a built-in friendship, and so there's a built-in trust. So I think Laguna's walls were, naturally down. I also don't think either of us knew what it was going to become. It was really, I just sat down to ask questions about the show. And then I was like, oh, how'd you start as a singer, as an artist? And then, Laguna starts talking about karaoke nights with her family. And then I'm like, okay, tell me more about your family. And then, it just kind of like evolved from there. And so there was this trust, and we just kept talking and it kept evolving. And, it really comes to a head in that moment where Laguna talks about losing her mother and, those last moments with her. And it really, none of it felt, too planned. It all just felt very effortless and very vulnerable. And she's in her dressing room, doing what she does every day, like getting into drag. So I think it was a very comfortable environment for her. Whenever I do documentary work, I like to film interviews of people in spaces that are comfortable to them. So her dressing room felt very natural. It was also, I mean, Paris is Burning as a template just for, a drag interview. It kind of lends itself to that as well. So yeah, everything about it just that set up the interview felt very safe and natural for the both of us. I, didn't have any crew with me. It was me with the camera and a mic, so I think that kind of intimacy also just us kind of like locked in her dressing room. And I think also the fact that it was Laguna, you getting ready for such a big moment, like it felt special. And so maybe you were more apt to be vulnerable in that moment too.
I'd like your
But
perspective on that, Laguna.
yeah,
Well, I'm a storyteller. It's like what I am. I've always been fascinated. I think that's a huge part of my job. Like I've always been really fascinated with acting and with theater and with music and like all things of the arts. And I had an ex who used to like I would, we would get into arguments and I would like say my side of the story and I would, get deliver this like speech of how I'm feeling. And he would every time he would always be like, and the Academy Award goes to like he would, but that's just who I am. Like I'm a storyteller and I just I've experienced a lot. I've had a really hard life and I think it took me a really long time. Honestly, it I I didn't realize that I hadn't healed from a lot of the things that I talked about in this film. Um, and for a long time, I couldn't watch it. It was really hard for me to watch because it was like when you know your stuff, when you know your story, um, it's almost like I remember even saying this. It's like, we're all the stars of our own movies. So it's like we don't talk about the things that we all know because we feel like, everybody knows them. And so, in sharing these, it was obviously Austin created a very safe space for me. Um, but yeah, it was really interesting to dig deep into all of these into my life like this and share them so openly. And it wasn't difficult to see it or difficult to share it. It's never difficult for me to share it. The hardest part is for me to watch it and to listen to it back. Because I remember the first time I listened to the story about my dad and what he did to me. And and I remember listening back for the first time and I was like, I was shocked because it felt like a horror film. I was like, oh my God, like, no way. And it almost sounds fake. Like, it almost sounds like a lie. It almost sounds like a script, like I wrote it. But that happened to me. And so it was actually in the process of afterwards, once we were finished and once we were started submitting and all that. And it used to be a 45-minute long film and then, to cut it down. So I watched many iterations of it. And it was really difficult, but it felt very important to share, this story or my story because I know that I'm not the only person who has dealt with that. There are so many, my story is multifaceted in the ways that I am. And I know that there are so many things to relate to. Everyone has experienced trauma or experienced family issues or body image issues or a disconnection from a parent or losing a parent. Like there's so many things that I have been through. And yeah, it's been interesting. But I
Well,
loved making it. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to comment that the film is clearly going to be one way of communicating those very thoughts, right? And I assume that in a way your stage act is a part of that as well. Can you talk a little bit about your work as a performer just outside the context of this film?
Oh yeah, I mean, drag is like my everything. I am Lagoona Blue. I'm the mermaid pop star. I have worked really hard to create a name for myself as a singer and a songwriter and a recording artist. I've been doing drag for about 8 years now, and drag for me, drag was the thing that like really changed my life. And everything that I'd always wanted for myself as an artist, became sort of a reality because of drag. Like I wanted to make music and I wanted to sing and I wanted to I don't know, it opened doors for me to do the things that I'd always told that I wasn't allowed to do. And for me, drag is a celebration of all the queer thing of all of for me, drag is a celebration of all of the things that queer people are shamed for by society. It is, when you're in drag, you're making a very loud stance against, the social norms and what society has to say for us. All of my life, I used to hate myself obviously, because of how I was raised, but also just everything that I thought was beautiful was bad, you know? And drag helped me realize that all those things that I used to hate myself for are the best parts about me. So it's been a really life altering, life changing experience to really dive deep into an art and make it my life and my career because it has been a huge journey of self-discovery and self-exploration, but also self-acceptance and self-love. And I think that is, I think the message of this film as well is that like despite the obstacles that life serves us, there is light. and there is love. And I think one of the greatest gifts that I've experienced is understanding how valuable I am and how worthy I am. Because coming from a world like I came from, I thought I wasn't worth anything. I didn't love myself at all. I thought I was a piece of shit. That's what I was taught. And so, yeah, it's been a really like it's been a tumultuous, adventurous, journey, but I'm grateful for it.
Well, I'm so pleased to hear you talk about it. I know parts of it have been painful, parts have been very immensely pleasurable, but I'm so pleased to hear you talk about it for us at Film Obsessive and for us to get to see the film. And I hope many audiences do. Austin, what is next for the film?
Next for the film, I mean, we're just looking at festivals for 2025. So,
Mhm.
you know, looking to get a New York screening because we have such a, insular community of New York queer people who would love to see it. So, we're just looking forward to sending it throughout the festival circuit this coming year. But we're really grateful and happy about the fact that it got to premiere at Atlanta Out on Film. It's such a great festival, so I think we have a great start. But yeah, just can't wait to share it with more people.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but did I hear earlier Laguna intimate that there might be something bigger in store for it or broader in store in the future?
Oh, I mean, listen, I'm all about speaking things into existence, and I'm all about, like I find that, you say you
We're
are what you
pinging
say
the
you are,
investors.
huh?
We're pinging
But
the investors at this part.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We need some
Yeah.
investors, we need, but yeah, I mean, I think that my story is so beautiful. I think that I believe that I was put on the earth to do drag and to share my story. And I think that I believe that all of us, we're all beautifully and wonderfully made and constructed of the things that happen to us and how we're raised and how we're loved and how we've grown. So I think I would love to take an even more deep dive into my life and share it on a even grander scale, with more music and more, more experiences and more stories and more growth. Because the reality is that I mean, we filmed that in 2021. So I have changed so much and grown so much. That all of this interview was before therapy, was before like those wounds were very fresh. I was fresh out of a breakup. I was like I'm in a totally different place now. So I would love to take that story. And if this, it ends very triumphantly, but what's crazy is to see how much my life has changed now and how many more things I've accomplished and how many things I've let go and how much I've grown. And I would like to give it an even more triumphant ending. So yeah,
Well,
bigger, better.
listen, congratulations to you on those triumphs. Congratulations to you, Austin, on the completion of the film. It does a remarkable amount in its short 15 minutes. I'd just like to thank you both for taking the time with us for Film Obsessive today. And best of luck to you both on the festival circuit and all that comes next.
My pleasure. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you
having
so
me.
much.